unfortunately, a part of this job. I will say as well that we recognize that the loss of a police K-9 in many ways is just as impactful as the loss of a human being. There is an undeniable bond between K-9 handlers and their animal partners. That's something that we are extraordinarily sensitive to, and we want to make sure that we communicate that to our friends here at the Wake County Sheriff's Office, make sure we communicate that to Santos handler. I want to give you just a real quick synopsis of how this thing played out in the early morning hours. My officers noticed a vehicle on North Smithfield Road with a revoked registration plate. The officers conducted a traffic stop around 12:30 a.m. During the course of their exchange with the driver ran from the officers. We reported in the earlier press release that it was the passenger. I stand corrected. It was in fact the driver. The officers gave chase. They were able to confine the suspect in a particular area, called for resources and assistance to include deputies from the Wake County Sheriff's Office and K-9 Santos. What I can tell you is that the officers and deputies were able to quickly locate the suspect, and as they were approaching the suspect to issue the commands and to take the suspect into custody, that is when the officer accidentally discharged the weapon, striking K-9 Santos and ultimately resulting in the K-9's death. As I said, this has been an extraordinary tragedy for us, and I can only imagine much more so for the Wake County Sheriff's Office and for their deputies. As Sheriff Rowe mentioned a few moments ago, we have been in constant communication since this event to make sure that we are supporting our people and that we are supporting one another. And I don't anticipate that that level of cooperation, support, and assistance will change as we move forward. With that said, I want to also let you know that this is an ongoing investigation. There are some things that I cannot share. Because it is an internal affairs investigation, there are personnel components that I'm not at liberty to discuss. I can tell you that the officer involved is on administrative leave. This is a very common practice for most types of internal affairs investigations. I will tell you that the officer is 31 years old, assigned to the patrol division of the police department, and has been in law enforcement for about 18 months. We anticipate being able to share some more information once we continue with the investigation, once we get to a place where it's prudent to share some additional content, but for now, that is what I'm at liberty to discuss. And I believe at this time we can take just a few questions. Yes, ma'am.
So how did the officer unintentionally discharge his weapon? Did he have it out? Was he following protocol?
This is part of the review that we're conducting, and understand that everything that I share with you now is preliminary. It is policy for officers when they are tracking, particularly in a dark area looking for a suspect, to have their weapon drawn, to have a weapon available, particularly as they're following the K-9 handler, because the K-9 handler's attention is focused on the animal. So it is not uncommon for the officers to have a weapon drawn and to have a weapon deployed in this type of search. But as far as the particulars surrounding the discharge of the weapon, how all of that came into being, that is a part of the internal investigation that we're conducting.
Was the entire 18 months with your police department, or has this officer worked elsewhere?
No, ma'am. Part of that time was with another organization.
Sheriff Rowe, your K-9 department has dealt with a great deal of loss over the last few months. What level of support do you guys need as you continue to move forward?
We've received a great deal of support from our fellow first responders, also from nonprofit groups I've reached out to, as the FPO, Back to Blue, NC, and the 200 Club. So we're very appreciative of our partners, and Nightdale is standing with us. So though we are heartbroken, and it's impacted us, and happened here in the month of May, as we've been recognizing and honoring our colleagues who have fallen in the line of duty, this adds another blow to the fact of the reality that the dangers of this job. But we're healing and we're moving forward together.
Is the deputy handler still active right now, taking time? What's next for the deputy handler?
We're giving all members of our office time and space to process this, to deal with it, to support and comfort each other. And we'll continue to serve and protect, and we'll stand by each other to make sure we get through it.
My question is for the chief. Do you have any indication of why the suspect fled in the first place?
We do have some indication. I prefer not to share that right now. That is a part of the investigation associated with his arrest. It may be relevant in our internal investigation as well. We do have some idea, and that may be part of some of the additional details that we share when we're ready to do so. Thank you.
Do you expect any body cam footage to be released?
It would not be my intent to release body-worn camera footage in the custody of the Knightdale Police Department. I do not see any particular value in sharing that footage with the general public. What I can tell you is that it has extraordinary value for our internal investigation, and we will certainly be reviewing it extensively to find out exactly what led to this accidental shooting. But as far as my intent at this moment to release that footage, I do not intend to do so.
Will this change protocol for when an officer is following behind a canine?
Our policy, anytime we review a critical incident, is to ascertain, are there opportunities to improve our training? Are there opportunities to improve our policy? You never want a critical incident to serve as a teachable moment, but I think that if we fail to try to glean valuable lessons from things like this, then we are doing our officers a disservice and we're doing our communities a disservice. So that remains to be seen. It really depends on the outcome of the investigation and what we determine from our review.
We have time for 2 more questions. Does anybody have anything else?
Well, I guess when you look at this loss, I mean, I don't want to sound insensitive, but we are dealing with a certain degree of property, right? I mean, I'm not saying a canine's life is not as valuable as an officer, but at the same time, how do you deal with that knowing, is this like, I don't know if there's any kind of formal charges, if you just determine that the officer did something inappropriate, you know, just like losing speeding in a vehicle, crashing a car, this is, I hate to say it, but this is a piece of equipment, right? So how do you, I guess I'm losing track of what my question was, is how do you attain to that, use that as determining if there is any kind of disciplinary action to be held against an officer? Because if you would take a human life, we might be looking at manslaughter or something else. We're not, because in some ways, the dog might just be property.
I think I understand your question. Where I might differ with you is that I don't view the animal as just property. I view the animal as a very valuable member of the organization, and as I said earlier, sometimes the loss of the canine partner is just as impactful as the loss of human life. What I can also tell you is that anytime we conduct an internal review, one of the things that we look at are not only policy violations, any sort of training failures, but we're examining that incident to determine whether there may be any sort of criminal element associated with it. We have a mechanism in place for determining that in this incident, and if there are any particulars that come out of that review, and in our collaboration with the DA's office, then we will certainly share that. Again, preliminarily, I don't think that is the case.
What does Santos mean to the team? He's been here since 2016.
Can you repeat the question?
What does Santos mean to the team? He's been here since 2016, longest active canine.
Well, I want to first echo what the chief just said. You know, Santos is not a piece of equipment. It's not a tool. It's not property, but it's a valued, loved, beloved member of the Wake County Sheriff's Office that was well-trained, well-conditioned, who had a desire to serve and protect, just like every member of this office. And so we grieve this loss, and we feel this pain that will be with us. So Santos was the longest-serving K-9 And again, very skillful, very dedicated, very attached to the K-9 handler and to all the members of the K-9 unit in this office. So we're at loss.
You guys, that's all the time we have for today. If you need anything else, Rachel and I will be here to assist you. Thank you.
Thank you.